You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Curlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with Miss Allie Garced, aka Allie the Agent. Allie, how are you doing today?
I'm great. I am just getting over COVID for, I think, the third time. How are you?
You got COVID?
Yeah, I got COVID.
I thought you sounded a little stuffy, but I kind of wasn't sure if that was your voice, and so I was like, well, maybe I just won't say anything.
Yeah, all of a sudden her voice just changed years after I've known her.
You went to Scotland and picked up a stuffy accent. So how was your trip? Tell us about it. Other than the fact that you got COVID there.
Yeah, aside from that, Scotland was really cold, but the Loch Ness, all of that, all the Scotch distilleries, they were cool. I don't even drink Scotch, so that was actually pretty hard, but it was an awesome country. I landed and I immediately felt like my lungs were cleared. Like, the air is so fresh there.
So clear.
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
I'm sure you feel the same way, though, out in Idaho.
Yeah, and it's definitely different when we go, like, to Denver, back to Idaho. We're out here in the nice areas.
Yeah.
Did you just see the monster, or what?
Oh, yeah. I had a few words with her. I said, hello, what's up? Yeah.
Yeah. Gave her a high five. All right. Yeah, she
was
took
like,
you across the lake.
I've been waiting for you. Exactly. Yeah, I just rode on her back.
Yeah.
It was super cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, so glad to hear that you had a good time. So glad that you're back. And I'm sorry that you got COVID again. Speaking of COVID. Joe Saul-Sehy on the show from Stacking Benjamins. And there's nothing with COVID about this episode. We don't mention it at all. But maybe he got it once. Anyway,
I'm sure he's heard of it.
Don't know. He's probably heard of COVID. Yeah, definitely heard of it.
I think so.
But no, if you guys don't know Joe or haven't listened to Stacking Benjamins, he's kind of like one of the, I don't know if it's like the forefathers or like, but they're leading the space in financial independence for sure. And his story, it's funny how he feels like his whole life he's kind of been an imposter in a way, right? Like he started not knowing anything about money, yet being a financial independence person. And now he's like leading this whole financial independence movement and helping people learn more about money, despite the fact 20 years ago he knew nothing about money. But what makes him so qualified was how far he had come, right? From knowing nothing, which most Americans do, to now knowing a whole lot about everything. And his story is so fun, and he's just such a funny dude.
Yes, I loved having him. It was a super awesome treat, especially after having listened to him for years on his podcast. So this is a great one.
Amazing. Yeah, guys, definitely listen all the way to the end. We've got some great... he dropped some funny lines kind of in the final four, and the last question I thought was pretty good and pretty funny, mainly because I come up with it. But guys, before we get into the show, I do want to ask real quick if you could leave us a rating and review on the show. We usually ask for the end, but we want to really pump this show up. We want to get this message out to a lot of people because our big message, right, is to reduce the U.S. retirement age, and we can't do that without your help. So Gil, leave us a rating and review, and now we'll bring on Mr. Joe Saul-Sehy. This episode of Investify was brought to you by the Fi Team, a team of investor-friendly agents that service all 50 states. If you are looking to house hack, to invest, grow your portfolio, and want a true investor-friendly agent on your side, go to thefiteam.com and click Get Started, and we can't wait to have a good conversation with you.
Joe Saul-Sehy, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good. Craig, Allie, I'm here for one reason only. I finally reached the mountaintop. I'm on Investify, so I'm retiring. I'm done. Yeah, this is it.
You're done. Oh my God.
Tell Paula to get that. I want to hear that conversation.
Hey, Paula, listen, we can't do this anymore. Yeah. No, It doesn't get any better than that. Does it get better? I don't think it does get better than this.
I think, man, hey, this is gonna be a great time. What's kind of funny is as I'm hearing your voice, I had a flashback because I used to listen to your podcast, Stacking Benjamins, while I was behind the curtain in my first house hack, like rolling around on like these 2 yoga balls, trying to stretch myself out. And so, yeah, thanks for that flashback, man.
I was telling, by the way, my son is here visiting. He has 14 rental properties. I was telling him, Craig, your story, literally about the sheet in the living room and about Josh Dorkin saying that if somebody would rent your underwear, you would rent it to them. That's a direct Josh Dorkin quote about Craig Kurlop.
Yeah, it's true. I would do it. And just like jeans cost more with holes in it, so does my underwear.
It goes up. Price goes up.
Price goes up. Yeah.
Allie's like, right. Maybe bridge too far. Might be.
Allie's like, okay, let's get to the show. Yeah. All right, Joe. So why don't you tell us, man? I kind of told you a little bit about where I got started, which was behind the curtain listening to you. But where did you get started in this whole financial independence thing?
Yeah, my story starts off, I think, the same place where a lot of families in America's story starts off. And that is a family that just didn't talk about money. I mean, my parents had some money, an average middle-class family, nothing exciting there. But the thing was, my brother and my sister and I, when we walk in the room and my parents were having a discussion about money, we immediately had to leave. You did not know what was going on. I didn't know how much money my dad made, didn't know how much money my mom made, didn't know what her net worth was, didn't know anything. And so I was given money very infrequently and trusted very infrequently with money, which I think now is and I'm not busting on my parents. I think this is everybody, right? This is so prevalent in our society, but I do think it's a mistake. I think that when you send a kid off to college, like I went off to college with no idea what money was about, the value of a dollar, respect for money, that we're going to turn what could have been little mistakes into huge mistakes. So I believe in giving kids a little bit bigger allowance, giving them a little more money.
So, Joe, yeah, I totally agree with that too. I think the money situation is as taboo in a lot of American families. What do you think? Do you think that people should share with their kids how much money they make or what their net worth is and all that? Or do you think that could be cause some issues with bragging rights in front of their friends and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, man, that's tough, isn't it? Because the last thing you want is everybody, all the other kids in school. I think that totally depends on your family. I think that letting them in though on like the family budget meetings, like Cheryl and I have a meeting that's 20 minutes once a week over pancakes or wine, depending on what time of day it is. It isn't meant to be an in-depth discussion.
In the morning, right?
Absolutely.
Pancakes at night, yeah.
Yes, pancakes at night. Yes, let's be clear. Or if it's middle of the day, Allie, it's both. It's brunch, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, but we want to keep it very simple. We talk about what our expenses were the last week. We walk through the banking app and what the expenses were. And then next week, how we plan to spend money. And by the way, then the bigger conversations we need to have are more organic. We would have our twins sit in on those meetings. And so while I never shared with my kids exactly how much money I made, they got a good idea based on how much money we were spending and how thoughtful we were about our expenses, about how we spent money. I think at the very least, that's important.
Did your kids know like roughly what your savings rate was? Because that's such a big thing in the FI community. Because I mean, if you're frugal, spending $20,000, how would they know?
No, they did. And what's cool about that, Craig, is that my path was, I was a financial disaster, which is where this story's headed. And so my kids were joining those meetings at a time where Cheryl and I were really getting our financial house in order. And so they saw us go from not great with money to much, much more locked down, knew where, not every penny was going all the time, but where most pennies were headed and how much money we were saving and the intentionality of saving more money. We went from unintentional about everything and money falling through every crack to incredibly knowing where everything was. Yeah. So let me share with you what happened when I went to college though. Joe with nothing, because this is where this goes, I think, for everybody. So I go to this college called the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina. It was a men's military college at that time. Not really relevant to the story, but I'm at the Citadel in week number 1, and there's all these dudes in this line at Mark Clark Hall, which was our student union. And I'm like, what's this line all about? Like, this must be something hot. And I don't remember if it was a Frisbee or pizza or a stadium blanket, but this was, and there's laws against doing this today, but credit card companies still find a way. I got in line to get an American Express card, right? First week of college, first week on my own. And I'm pretty excited about this thing. And I get up there and I'm very truthful on the application. How much money do you make? 0. What's your net worth? 0, right? What's your ability to repay? Basically none. And you guys know what happened. 3 weeks later, I go walk into my little, this is going to date me a little bit, but this is before email. So you got really excited when you'd walk into the post office and you'd see that little postal box that you had with a glass front. And there was a little piece of mail, and you get so excited, like somebody's thinking about me, and it was American Express. And there was this little green card, member since today. And so the first time we got leave, we go to this mall in North Charleston, me and 5 friends of mine, and we go to this really high-end restaurant. I don't know if you guys have heard of this place. It's called Ruby Tuesday. Just this
top notch.
Salad bar and everything. They were so incredible. And so I sit with these guys, and I don't know these guys that well, and I want to make friends. And so the bill comes, and man, I flash that card and I go, guys, I got it. They're like, really? Oh yeah. No, I'm buying lunch. Me and American Express buying lunch. I really had no idea, frankly, what that meant, except that American Express was going to help me. So I bought everybody lunch. Then I go all the way down to the other end of the mall, where Nordstrom is, because God knows I can't go to the second most expensive store. I got to go to the most expensive one. And I see on this mannequin, this badass sweater. In fact, I actually have the sweater here because this sweater I still have. Yeah. For people not on video, I'll describe it for you. This is a Nordstrom 1986, and look at it. Still looks new. Like Duran badass sweater. Look at that. Yeah, this is so beautiful. But what's funny is it's quality, so it really holds up. But I paid $1 bajillion for this thing. I'm at the Citadel. I can't not wear I have to wear a uniform every day. What the hell am I buying a sweater for? And then the second thing, the Citadel's in Charleston, South Carolina. Like, it's cold both days. It's like when it snows, we'd have this huge, party that it snowed, because it never snows in Charleston. But I buy this sweater. And so, I don't know, it's like 3 weeks later, I go back to check that mailbox again, and there's a letter, and I'm super excited, and I open it up, and there's this note from American Express. And I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, well, I'm sure American Express is thanking me, like, hey, we're a good team. You're spending some money. You're doing this stuff. We got your back, pal. Well, that wasn't the case. American Express had this bill. And I don't remember how much it was. I think it was like $320. And I had no money, and I had no idea how I was going to pay this. So I did what any smart person would do. I called my mom, and I said, hey, Mom, we have a problem. And Mom said, we don't have anything. You have a problem. And 2 months later, that card was cut up. I spent the whole next summer after it went to collections. I spent the whole next summer trying to repay and part-time jobs, and get myself out of the hole. But I didn't learn from that, because my mom said, you have a problem. But once again, not throwing my parents under the bus. There's no financial education for most parents. It was just figured out. So then I kept touching that stove, man. And I got in worse and worse and worse and worse trouble, to the point that I became a financial planner, which is scary because I was a money disaster, and I'm a financial planner, and which shows you kind of the state of the industry, because I think in some cases it's the same. There's people advising other people that can't manage their own way out of a hole. And I'm in this rusted out minivan because my credit is so bad. I had to park my van when I go to the office around the back, way far away, because I didn't want anybody to see that while I was great at telling other people what to do with their money, I was a complete sham disaster. By the way, I came clean with a friend of mine, And I said, dude, my credit is horrible. My car, like at this time I'm married and I've got 2 young twins. My wife is still in school. And I said, man, I gotta find a way to get a car. And the guy goes, well, buying a new car is not optimal, but here's the cool thing. Dealers will give anybody a car. Like everybody gets a car at the car dealership. You can't go wrong. Well, I will tell you, this is how bad my credit was, guys. I went to the car dealer and I told the car dealer, dude, I'm like, yeah, I need a new minivan for my twins and my family. He's like, oh yeah, no problem. I go, I got to tell you, my credit is horrible. He's like, oh, I got you, man. You're fine. You know, I wasn't even thinking about interest I was going to pay, the fact that he was going to send me to a loan shark. I just needed a new ride. And the guy went and ran my credit and came back and goes, dude, your credit is horrible. He goes, I can't sell you a car. Like my credit was that bad. So anyway.
Can I ask what was it? Like what is so bad that a car dealership wouldn't take it?
Oh, I was around 500. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
So
that was because of that is that because of that $300 expense that you
no.
Oh, okay. I got worse. Yeah. It's like, hey, the 80s, man, you know, or the 90s, like $300 is a lot more then.
All the way through the early 90s, I kept applying for new credit and getting accepted, even though my ability to repay was very low. My understanding of money was low. I've got this trashed credit report that's getting worse and worse and worse. And of course, you know, the between the, not just the interest rate, but the overdue fees, right? I mean, all of these charges just keep mounting. And then as they go to collections, then the collection agency adds in I'm paying so much money for so little original debt just because of my stupidity and my inability to have some respect for money. This story ends, by the way, I'll finally bring this to a close. When I'm driving home from a meeting across town in Detroit and I run out of gas, and I've tapped all of my relatives for money. I've tapped every credit source. My credit score, as I mentioned, 500, could have even been below on that day. I don't know. I had no recourse. I had nowhere to go for cash. And so I searched through the seats of the car and under the seats for money. I found about 85 cents. And, you know, I talk a lot about 330 million people in America, and half of us say we cry about our money. And yet there's great shows like yours, there's books, there's videos, there's all this stuff. 330 million people in America, half of us say we cry about our money. And that was the day that I cried about my money. I was so screwed. I had to walk like a mile. This sounds like an old guy story. I had to walk a mile to this mobile station. The dude doesn't want to give me the gas tank, by the way, because he thinks I'm going to steal it. This little plastic crap gas tank, gas can. So I give him the 85 cents. I have to give him my ID so he knows I'll come back. So I have to give him my driver's license. I put 85 cents in there. I walk back to my car. I'm crying as I fill it up. And then I realized right then that I had to do things differently. I had to stop talking a good game for other people. I had to start doing what I said. Number one. Number two was I had to surround myself with better people and better noise. I needed a better inner circle of advisors. I also needed to realize that there wasn't any help coming, you know? And there's one giant lie I think a lot of people live, which is I lied to myself about that. I thought I could out earn my bad money habits. Like my answer to everything was just, if I just earn a little bit more money, things will be good. I think the first year I was a financial planner, I made $85,000, spent 100,000. If I had made 100,000, I would have spent 120. If I made 120, I would have spent 150. Made 150, I would have spent 170. You cannot out earn your bad money habits, period. I couldn't, nobody else can. And that was a big aha as well.
Wow. So at that point, when you're like at the lowest that you could be financially, how bad were you in the hole? If you remember, and plus you went to the Citadel, right? Like, did you pay for that?
Yes.
Or was that also loans? What did all that look like?
Yeah. So I went to the Citadel on a nearly full ride scholarship. So that was lucky. I was there on a track and cross country scholarship. Now the bad news, Allie, was I didn't understand the value of that scholarship. But I did understand working for your meals. And I got halfway through school. I got through my sophomore year and I was injured a lot. And my coach who'd recruited me thought that I was a diamond in the rough runner, which is why I ran a 4:16 mile, which is fast, but not super fast, and didn't justify the scholarship that I got, but I ran it 6 times. So they thought I had more in the tank. Turns out they were wrong. I didn't have anything more. And then I got hurt and I felt guilty that these guys are paying for my college and I'm not doing anything to repay it. So 2 years in, I decided I'd gotten the most out of military college that I wanted, which was the discipline piece, which really is in your freshman year. You get the crap kicked out of your freshman year. And then after that, it's really a school where you march a little bit. But I decided to go back to Michigan State and I paid my own way and I ended up working 3 jobs, and that got me in even worse because I felt like I needed credit to get there.
Yeah, Joe, you said something like really powerful about, when you were walking and crying to the gas station about how you realized that you needed to surround yourself with better people. And we say this a lot, and it's a bit cliche, but I think like in any stage of life, whether you're walking to your car with 85 cents of gas in a little tin can, or you are, or you're at like a level of, hey, I just hit like a $2 million net worth, and now I want to get to like $10 million, or like that. It's a different person, right? You're surrounding yourself with different people when you're going from 0 to $1 million than you are from 1 to 10 and 10 to 100, or however much wealth you want to grow. And so I think like wherever you're at in life, if you find yourself stuck, you may need to find a new or a different group of people to surround yourself with. It's
funny you say that, Craig, because businesses go through the same cycle. We interviewed Mark Randolph on our podcast. He's the co-founder of Netflix, and he talked about in any growth cycle, whether it's a person or a company, you're going to have one set of people, and sadly, you're going to outgrow those people. If you're a startup, you're going to have these jack of all trades that are really excited about your mission, and all of a sudden, you get to a point, right, where all of a sudden you can't have the jack of all trades. You can, but you truly need people that are specialized in these individual areas, and then you have to keep leveling up. So yeah, whether it's a person or a company. And by the way, Allie, to finish answering your question, I was just over $100,000 in debt. Of that money, a good chunk of it, around 70,000, was debt to the IRS, because along with the help that I did not have that first year when I made $85,000, I had no idea how taxes worked. And I heard about a good accountant. I took my stuff to this accountant and I go, hey man, make this work, put this together. And I remember him coming back to me because I didn't know what was deductible. I had no idea what was deductible. I had no idea about how to shelter any money. I had no idea about running a business at all. And it was all 1099 income. And he came back and said, I owe like $15,000. And I said to him, I remember, and this is, of course, like any buddy, I wait till the last second to file my taxes. So I find out the day before it's due that I owe $15,000. I already have $20,000 of credit card debt. And I remember looking at the guy, I'm like, where the hell am I going to come up with this? Where am I? And I yelled at him. Like I'm like, what the hell, man? You screwed me. He didn't screw me.
Yeah.
I screwed me. But what I didn't do was hire an accountant who taught me how this stuff worked. And when I finally got my act together, which was 4 years later, because I did the smart thing after that. You know what I did? When I found out I owed all that money, I didn't file. I did absolutely nothing. And then I didn't file the next year because I was still afraid. And I thought, I don't get how this works. I know I owe a ton of money. I can't repay it. By the way, when I say that I did the smart thing, for people that can't hear my sarcasm, that's the dumbest thing you should possibly do. When I finally got the right people in my corner, this woman, Susan, who is a great accountant in Detroit, sat me down and explained how taxes worked, told me about all the deductions that I was eligible for as a business owner that I had no idea, right? I mean, everything. The computer that we're talking on today, I could have deducted the computer I was using at the time. All the tools that I used, all of these payments that I had, I could have deducted.
What about the sweater?
Maybe it's a business lesson now, right?
Yeah.
I've talked about it enough that it now is a business prop. So yeah. But at the time, maybe not. But anyway, most of that IRS debt was not money I actually owed. It was penalties. I owed a crap load. So I compounded the problem by not getting educated very quickly.
And by hiding.
And by hiding. Yeah.
Wow. So
That's,
so
I
what
mean,
was the
that's
pivotal moment where you ended up like, well, that was the pivotal moment when you were
Yeah.
down in the dumps, right?
Crying. Right.
How did you pick yourself up? How did you start going on the right track?
Well, the first thing that I figured out was I had to take the same advice I was giving to clients. You can't do anything without an emergency fund. I had to have a fallback, and I had to start using cash instead of using credit. Now, what's funny is now that I have a respect for money and I have a zero balance on my credit cards, now I play the reward game, right? And now I do understand debt, and I use debt in a lot of facets of my life. I use debt, but I had to live a cash lifestyle to get that respect I didn't have for a dollar first. So I went all cash. I began building an emergency fund. And what's funny is I've got all these creditors breathing down my back. And in the past, I thought they were in charge because they would tell me, hey, you got to pay this now or this is going to, and I realized I'm not going to get anybody paid if I listen to all these people. I got to listen to me first. I built an emergency fund, and I had to basically tell the creditors to go screw themselves, and you'll get paid when you get paid, and I'll get us all out of the hole. And what's cool is, and I find this cool, for some people, bankruptcy might be the way to go. For me, I didn't want to declare bankruptcy, much like I didn't want money from the Citadel for not running track and cross country, not being what I said I was going to be. I did not want to do that. I wanted to get myself out of this hole. And once I took control and I built my emergency fund and I started prioritizing my debt, I got out of that hole way faster than I thought that it was going to take. And by the way, it went from so demoralizing every day and overwhelming and just this black place to within the first couple months, I felt so empowered when I realized that I was in charge and that this was going to get done. It was like all I had to do was change my mindset first. And once that mindset shift changed, everything changed. Like everything changed. And then it became a game. And part of that game was, how do I now make more money? Now that I know how to control the outflows, how do I make more money to do this quicker? And then that steamroller, man, it was 5 years and I was clean. And within 5 years later, my balance sheet went from nothing to phenomenal in a hurry.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's
So
awesome.
what was that? Like, what got you? I know, like, did you figure this out yourself, or did you hear something? Or was there a mentor that guided you? Did you read a book?
No, you know what's funny is that I read a lot of books. I mean, I read a ton of stuff. One of the best things I read is from somebody that I frankly often like the least, which is Susie Orman. Susie Orman was the person that talked about taking the dollar bills in your wallet and uncrinkling them and putting them all the same way in your wallet and getting that tactile feel that it's like the Vicki Robin thing, right? That once we realize how hard we work for a dollar, we're going to take better care in how we spend that dollar. And so Susie embodies that in her first book. I think Susie talks well about that and about long-term care. Those are two areas I really like what Susie has to say. But this respect for a dollar was job one. Job two was taking people out to breakfast. And often I didn't have money for breakfast, so I would just eat at home and have a coffee, right? While they ate breakfast, or I'd have like a little piece of toast. But I'd invite people out before work who were great with money, and I would pick their brain, as many people as I could. And I created this group that was like my mastermind. And then I did the same thing with people that I referred people to for my financial planning practice. So the estate planning attorney that I liked, the mortgage person that I liked, the real estate professional that I liked, like all the different people I referred to, these people were hugely successful. I was successful too in telling other people what to do, but you could tell by the place they live, the way they managed their money, what they did. And I just started quizzing them like you're quizzing me now about my story. And I think people listening to your podcast, I mean, the great thing about what you guys do is you've got these people telling their story over and over, and you start to see these truths, right? And so I started seeing the truth of how valuable that group of people is. And for me in particular, how important it was to hide money from myself. And I had told people, I'd given this advice to so many people. Automation's the key. You want to focus your brain on growth. If you can you can't focus on growth when you're figuring out how the Netflix bill is going to get paid, or how the utility bill is going to get paid. use automation as your best buddy and focus on all the upside.
Yeah. What are some automations that you would recommend someone that, maybe is struggling with this should do?
Well, the very, very first thing for me, if you're somebody listening to this, is like I am, and you're just a disaster when you get a dollar bill in your hand, don't get dollar bills in your hand. So how do we do that? And I'm actually going to talk on this on two levels, Craig. So the first one is for the disasters out there, have the money, have it go into a bank account, and not a bank account that's easy to get to. So the problem with having money, using direct deposit as an example, if you've got a W-2 job, the problem with direct deposit is that it goes into a bank account and then you've got an ATM card and it all comes right back out, right? So create another savings account at a different bank than your primary checking. Put that in a bank across town that you've got to drive to, or in some cases, and I would do this with clients when I was a planner, you'd have like a wire transfer fee that was like $15 to move money over quickly if it was an emergency. If it's truly an emergency, $15 is no big deal because it's an emergency. But if it's not an emergency, now your brain's going to come up with a different way to solve this because we are lazy. Like at heart, your brain wants to do the laziest thing possible. And so if I put my money in a spot where I can't get to it, my brain is forced then to come up with a different solution to the problem. And I come up with something that doesn't require cash. And it's incredible how well hiding money works. So that's number one. Number two is if you're somebody with up and down income like I had, right? I was paid when my clients paid me. A lot of people, especially in real estate, if they're not getting monthly checks that are consistent from people renting from them, but if they're flippers, as an example, they get this huge amount of money at once and then they get buried. Then they have a huge amount of money and then they get buried. For those clients of mine, and for me, because I was paid that way as well, you do the same thing with all the money. You take all the money, you put it in a spot that's hard to get to, you figure out what's a sustainable wage to pay yourself, and pay yourself like it's W-2 income every 2 weeks. Because what ends up happening is you get that big check and you make a bunch of dumb purchases with it if you don't do this. I would always do ramen noodle, steak dinner, and I'd buy a big screen TV. And then ramen noodle. You don't want to do that. So if your income is up and down, try to make it predictable. And what's cool then you can predict the grocery bill. Then you go, okay, my grocery budget is X, my utility budget is X. It's much easier to budget if your income is succinct and is the same. And then what I do and what people I used to advise would do is twice a year, if there's extra money in that bank account because you had a kick-ass year, give yourself a bonus because you're the business owner. So twice a year at the end of July and on either December 31st or January 1st, whichever one fits better my tax situation, right? If I think I'm going to earn less money last year, I'll bonus myself January 1st. If I think I'm going to earn more money, I'll bonus myself in December. If I'm not sure, I'll bust it into two and do half this year, half next year. But I'll give myself a bonus at the end of June, and then I'll give myself a bonus at the end of the year. With any extra money. And I'll use those then for capital projects, things we want to do.
And capital projects is in like investments or as like you want to rehab your house or something?
Yeah, whatever it might be. If I want to set up a vacation fund, if I want to take I just got back from 3 weeks in Spain. If I want to do that, if I want to rehab, if the investments are low to reach financial independence, whatever it might be, I'll make that decision when I get the money.
Yeah, no, Joe, I love that. And just kind of iterate, like that's almost exactly as to what I do. Like I like to have a buffer in each account that I have. And so if I'm not above that, every dollar goes into those buffers.
Yeah.
And then once I'm beyond those buffers, I continuously pay myself a salary. And once I'm beyond those buffers, that goes into a separate bank account, anything above and beyond the buffer. And that's what usually I try to do it for some sort of investment, but then I'm like, yeah, okay, this is our play money. It might be an investment. It might be a vacation, whatever it is. And our vacations aren't usually too splurgy. I'm not like Allie over here flying first class to Scotland and all this crazy stuff. So yeah.
Guys, I agree with Allie on that one. I think it was Ramit Sethi who told me first that, if it's more than a 4-hour flight, you got to upgrade. It's just such a pain.
I'm not.
He just posted it on Instagram too. Yeah.
I'm not there. Yeah.
I feel like Allie, if Craig could, he'd zip himself into the luggage and see if he can.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right,
carry on. Because I'm not paying the extra baggage fee. Yeah. Oh
I would
man.
love to talk
Yeah.
about the relationship with your wife while, because you have two kids. It was, you got the minivan and you're picking yourself back up. What does that look like when, as far as like a spousal relationship and like the change in mindset between the two of you? Did you guys like read books together, listen to whatever it was, talk to somebody? And then follow on question is, how did you find the people that you ended up having breakfast with?
Yeah, no, the people, I can answer that one first because it's really easy. There are people all around you who, they just you feel like they're successful. And then when you ask them questions over breakfast, you get a feeling whether that was right or not. Right. And some people, by the way, are successful, but they just didn't want to talk about it, because as we began this discussion, we live in such a closed society where people don't want to talk about it. That's fine. But man, when I would find those people that were open and would give me the numbers, well, then heck, I would take them out again and again and again. So it is part trusting your instinct that this might be a great candidate. And then number two, go ahead and take them out to the first breakfast and see what happens. But in terms of Cheryl and I, our relationship has changed a lot. First of all, when I was earning money and she wasn't, and I realized we were screwed, I did again the worst thing that you could do. I hid it. And the reason, and I didn't hide all of it. She knew that things were rough, and certainly she could look at anything, any of our expenses, look at the credit card statements, look at anything that was coming in. But I always had an answer because I was the one that was earning money. And at the time she was in school. So I didn't want her to worry. So I said, hey, I've got this. Even when clearly I didn't have crap. Like I had nothing. I was like, Cheryl, don't worry about it. That was wrong. And then later on, as I came clean, and the way I came clean was I realized as I was getting my act together that we were having fights over and over and over. And part of it was the way we spent money was frustrating. And a lot of our arguments were because we just didn't talk about it on a consistent basis. So the reason I don't like this, this big Camp David summit some families do, where once a quarter they get together and they have this big financial meeting. The money geeks love that, right? We're going to go through all the spreadsheets, and the other person in the relationship's like poking their freaking eye out because it sucks. We needed something that was fun and short, but also kept the conversation just going so that we'd have organic conversations between the meetings. But the reason for that was, Allie, she and I would come home with things that were important to the family on the same day. And because we didn't talk about it and we were running really thin margins, right, between overdraft and being right on with our checking account, we'd, which are my overdraft fees that I paid during this time were just horrible because we overdrafted all the time and it was communication and no accounting. But we both come home with something important to the family, like she would come home with kids' school clothes, very important. And I would come home with the latest board game, equally as important to the entire family. Like we needed both of these things. And once again, if you can't hear sarcasm, mine was not that important. But but what's funny is that we need outlets so we don't do the big screen TV. So the board game's truly not the problem. Back before Netflix, Cheryl liked to buy the stupid DVD at the end of the grocery aisle. Like the new movie come out, then they have the DVD for $20. I'm like, you're going to watch this once. Why wouldn't you go down and rent it? But she really enjoyed that. And the thing is, the DVD wasn't the problem. And she would watch it several times. The board game I would play. And yeah, for $50, I have this evening of entertainment that, we play over and over. So it costs very little in the big. That wasn't the problem. The problem was we didn't talk and we didn't give each other permission to do these little outlet spending. So the weekly meeting was the answer to all of that. It was, how do we get in a place where if I am going to spend money, if she's going to spend money, that we just know about it. We also, by the way, accounting wise, came up with a 3 checkbook system. We have a shared checkbook, and then she has hers and I have mine. And not because we don't trust each other, because we go through all 3 of them, but because we both enjoy lives where we move very fast. And so I spend money freely out of my single checkbook because I can keep up with that. She can keep up with hers. But if we were both going in and out of this same checkbook all the time, it would still be a disaster. Even if, and we tried that for a while, having a buffer, and that buffer had to just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So where the 3 checkbook system was much better for us.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the answer to a lot of these problems is simply just communication, and on a regular basis, and not quarterly, but weekly. I have to say, my wife and I, we have our weekly meetings, but I'll admit that we're on and off about them. But I feel like when we're on, we have streaks of months where we have no arguments, no fights, everything is great. And then for some reason, we get too busy that one Sunday, or we got to get back, and so we don't. And then that compiles into the next Sunday and the next Sunday. And then it's like, shoot, we haven't had our meeting in 2 months. Oh, and we just had our first argument in the last 3 months. And so I just think like there's just a perfect correlation almost between just that giving your wife or your husband or whatever spouse gender they are these days, like giving that person a space to ask them like what is wrong, what is hurting right now, so they can actually tell you without it being like a backlash, I think is huge in any relationship.
Well, and what's funny is that, we think we need to have these deep conversations, and being a guy that was a financial planner for 16 years, I would agree. We do need to have them, but I think that weekly meeting's not the place. Because we have the light, easy discussion, Cheryl and I like to hike. And so we'll go on these long walks together in the woods. And then we have the deep conversation. It's organic. We only have the deep conversation, Craig, to your point, when that meeting's happening regularly, because we get off the horse too. And what I love that you said is that you get back on it. Because I know when I was coaching other people, that the problem was they go, oh, the weekly meeting doesn't work. Well, why doesn't it work? Well, because we stopped doing it. Well, no, you just need to tweak the meeting and tweak how it works for you, because it's going to be a little different for everybody. And the fact that you guys get back on, I think is truly the key. There was one more, Allie, one more important answer to your question, which is finding help. Because Cheryl knew that I had hid stuff before, and the fact that I didn't want her to worry, and partly because she's heard my crap now for, 30 years, that we decided that for us, having a financial planner that I respected and that she respected, that was outside the two of us, there was somebody that would work well with us. So if I say something, a lot of the time Cheryl will go, whatever. But if our financial planner says it, the same exact thing, now it sticks. And by the way, sometimes having that third party who's not emotional about you, emotional about your personal situation, we've shared with him, in our case, our goals. Rick will help us, walk through like, okay, you guys said you wanted this. So how come we're having this conversation? We should be having this other one. And then Cheryl will look at me and go, exactly.
Yeah. No, I love that. Sometimes you have to, and you talk to him behind Cheryl's back a little bit too, to say, hey, make sure you tell Cheryl this.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Here's an extra $20.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. But Joe, I would love to talk a little bit about kind of like what, it sounds, I think your story is so inspiring, because it truly is like you came from absolutely nothing. And now I think it's pretty clear you're financially stable, and you've come through that. And so there's hope out there for you guys if you feel like you're broke. But curious as to like, okay, like, you got your saving figured out, you got your how you made money figured out. Where are you investing your money? Like, do you like real estate? Do you like the index funds?
No. So what's funny is on my personal journey, anybody who's followed me before knows I don't do real estate. And by the way, I love real estate. And I think there's 2 ways to beat inflation, which is your key: real estate or equities. For me, equities work. I own 1 rental property. I made every mistake in the book, which is exactly why I didn't like it. If I had done the stuff that I know now, I might like owning real estate a ton better. But equities have been it's like an old blanket. I know it so well. I'm so comfortable with the stock market and with stocks and the ups and downs. That's where I do. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So it is where, and I do have some real estate, but it's in REITs. So I have a couple of popular REITs. The Vanguard REIT is one of my 2 REITs. The other one's a dimensional REIT fund. But that's my stuff. Who's got the awesome rooster going?
Oh, can you hear the roosters?
The rooster is awesome.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Are you living in Key West? Have you guys been to Key West?
No.
No, I've never been to Key West.
Oh, you go to Key West, there's these wild roosters running all over the island, and they wake you up at 4:30 in the
Really?
morning because Key West is awesome. I highly recommend it. But yeah,
Oh man,
Nice.
it's funny enough. We're thinking about going there in October, but
You
yeah, no,
should.
we live on a little farm here in northern Idaho, and we've got some chickens and some cows and all that stuff. So yeah, the chickens they're just so excited to hear you, Joe. They're like,
Yes.
is that Joe Saul-Sehy?
Wait, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
We hope this episode is inspiring you to take action. If you're thinking about becoming a real estate agent or an agent who wants to join an investor-friendly team, just hit me up on Instagram at the Fi Guy, because we are growing our team in Denver, Seattle, San Diego, and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but also adding to our network in all 50 states. And if you didn't already know this, the Fi team provides a super supportive environment with one-on-one coaching, accountability, and ongoing training to help develop kick-ass, rock-star, investor-friendly real estate agents. So hit me up on Instagram at the Fi Guy, shoot me a DM, and we'll set up a time to chat. Can't wait to chat with you.
Anyway, so Joe, I know like people, the simple way, right, to invest in index funds and in equities is just like you got VTSAX, you pick a couple of, but I suspect there's maybe a little bit more to it. Like let's maybe dig down one layer
Sure.
of like,
Sure.
do you have a certain amount allocated to high dividend yielding things like REITs or
Yes.
whatever they're called? Yeah. How do you structure that?
Yeah. So let me talk kind of order of operations, because I think that if you're investing outside of real estate in the financial markets, that investing in something like VTSAX is the perfect place to start. J.L. Collins, in his book, A Simple Path to Wealth, got it 100% right. But the reason he got it right is not the reason I see a lot of money geeks think that he got it right. He got he got it right because by buying everything, you get rid of the nerves, you get rid of the worry, you get rid of the FOMO, you get rid of the I might pick the wrong thing, because you're buying everything. And by taking that off the table in a responsible way and going, listen, you will reach your goal if you just buy everything, is a wonderful place to start. However, I get frustrated as a guy who's been on both sides, financial media now for the last 15 years. And then before that, financial planner for 16. I get frustrated when I see people stop there. It's like we get, we're on the Mayflower and we get to the quote new world where people already live, by the way, right? they're waving at the natives, but we discovered it. But they never get off the Mayflower. They're like, hey, I sail VTSAX all the way. Once your net worth gets to the point, I agree with a guy named Nick Majuli on this, who has a wonderful book called Just Keep Buying. Nick Majuli says that when you get to the point that your investment growth or decline matters more than you putting the money into it, that's when you need to start getting more, I guess, official about your asset allocation. So then what I do is I use a process where I begin with the end in mind. So I start off with the goal. What is the goal? What's the time frame? And then what asset is going to make that a reality? As an example, OG, my co-host, and I were talking literally today to somebody that called into us about their real estate investment. And he was talking about, for a 10-year goal, what's the right thing to use? And OG said, it's a mistake to think about 10 years as much as to think about this is now going to be the rest of your life. It's for financial independence. So if he's comfortable with real estate, buying more income producing properties versus selling off stuff. If he can buy enough income producing properties to sustain a lifestyle, why wouldn't he do that? He's leading with what he knows. He's meeting the time frame goal versus switching up his asset allocation to go into all this crap that he doesn't know. Like, it doesn't have to be that difficult, but when you begin with the end in mind, you're going to ask yourself a few questions. How much money do I need to reach that goal? What rate of return do I need? And then that will lead you to what's the right type of investing to reach that goal. As an example, I feel like people using rental property in a way that I'm buying property and I'm going to live off the income stream later have a different set of goals and a different requirement than somebody that's doing flipping, right? You're going to have different things. Somebody doing house hacking who's really trying to get that machine up and running. Great place. Great thing to do. they're gonna have a different end in mind. So start off with, I think a lot of people start off with, ooh, that sounds really good to me, I'm going to do that with my money, versus where do I want to go? And then take that wide range of investment choices and go, what's the optimal investments to use to get to that thing? So I use something, and now we're going to get into nerd territory, but I use something with my investments then called the Efficient Frontier. There's this Dr. Harry Markowitz won a Nobel Prize for the Efficient Frontier. He was actually working on a series of other things, including troop movement, which it's funny how many, sadly, our inventions come back to war, but he's working on the most efficient use. And he realized that different investments do better under different conditions. So with different tax consequences and different timeframes, you diversify your investments optimally over history based on what you're looking for. So you're much more likely, Craig, to get a better investment mix, I think, if you begin with the end in mind.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. And I think, like, to your point about, real estate versus stock market or whatever it is, it's like real estate is kind of the route that I chose to go, just because when I was 23, living behind the curtain, listening to Stacking Benjamins, I was like, okay, like, how do I hit my goal as fast as possible? And for me, it was like, well, this property that I'm sitting in right now is going to cash flow me $1,000 a month. Right. And by the way, I have a net worth at this time of maybe $10,000. And so $10,000 in the market is going to get me like $40 a month or something. Right.
Right.
So
right.
To me, it was like, well, here's the obvious route. And so like, you house hack a few times, you hit your goals of, I want 5,000 a month, but then, right. But now, wait, this is 6 years later, I've got, a lot of equity in these properties, but that equity isn't really, I mean, it's sitting there, it's protection, I guess, but it's not really doing anything for me. And so, that's kind of the inefficiencies of that real estate can have.
Yeah. And I can tell you specifically, because I realized I went through the methodology and the order of operations. I didn't directly answer your question. So I use a group of funds called dimensional funds. Dimensional is the group. If you go back in history, they're actually the people that were the pioneers of really great indexing. A lot of people think that Vanguard is not true. Jack Bogle actually at the beginning said that index funds are crap and why would anybody do that? And then changed his tune later on. And that's not to, by the way, put down Vanguard funds. It's just the mythology that we give ourselves is not at all true. So I use dimensional funds. For me to go into my asset allocation, not really that important because it's based on my goal, not based on yours. But I use a collection of the hull of my ship is large company stock index, and it's a specific, and I have to go into how dimensional index is, which is a little different, but large company stocks, the hull of my ship, that's about 35% of my portfolio. And then the next smaller part is my mid-size and small company stocks. I have international, I have an outsized portion of my money in emerging markets, which is suboptimal. But it's because I love emerging markets and I'm always on top of that area of the market. It's stupid because I know I can't beat it, but I do it anyway. I invest in what I believe in. And then I have a sandbox account on the side where I buy some individual stocks with about $50,000. I buy individual stocks. I buy things that interest me, like the fact that, lack of water around the United States and around the world. So I invest in different water companies and play out some of the strategies that we talk about on the show. Again, not because of the fact that I'm financially independent, I'm not as worried about growing it as I am in plugging into these areas that interest me.
I love that, Joe. I love that you were so open and sharing about that. One thing I want to ask, and it's a thing that I remember Warren Buffett saying, and he's like, basically, number one rule of investing is you never spend the principal. And so curious, do you follow that rule? Do you find yourself, do you ever have to spend what you put in?
I don't, the answer is not yet. Right. But I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, it's funny. So do that at your own risk, right? Warren Buffett said it. Why the hell would you disagree with that? But I think about people in retirement that are, people aren't as lucky as Warren Buffett, where they, and lucky is maybe the wrong word. They're not as advanced as Warren Buffett is. And certainly there's a lot of people that might be listening to the show that are in their 50s that are just wondering if they'll get there. I think having a glide path where you're not putting your last nickel or quarter or dollar in the Pepsi machine right as you're, and you still got 2 days left to live is suboptimal. But if you can coordinate it where you're clutching your chest and you're spending your last dollar at the same time, might be what some of these people are looking for. I think some people, I guess what I'm saying, Craig, is yes, in a perfect world, yes, keep the base and then have the base throw off cash, right? But for some people listening, to have a drawdown strategy that makes sense because you're not going to have the time to get there because you started too late, is something that they have to do.
I find it interesting hearing your story, especially since I don't know if we were on air or it was before we went live, that you mentioned that your son has rental properties. And so I see like some similarities with me and my family where my dad got burned in the stock market. He was like, never invest in the stock market. That shit will burn you. So I'm like, okay. But then I joined the military and work was a lot. I didn't always have a lot of time to invest in real estate, and real estate was too scary. The stock market was an easier way in. I could just do it without even leaving my house. I just need to jump on a computer as opposed to finding a real estate agent, finding a property, making sure the numbers work, all that. So when I first started out, it was only the stock market for the first 6-8 years before then I purchased my first real estate.
Isn't that
property.
Wild? That's wild.
Yeah. So it's the exact flip or exact opposite. How does that correlate? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to actually tell you, I think we're going the same way. Cause I'll tell you, our story was, my kids grew up with me. They went to our family meetings, and I realized that at some point, even though I have a great relationship with both of my kids, they tune you out a little bit, right? Just cause it's dad. It's like, yeah, whatever, you're dad. And so there's a little bit of eye roll going on there. And I really found this important. And much like you guys are curating what you think the best is for the Investify community, I try to do that for Stacking Benjamins. I try to do that then also for my family, curate the best. If you're not going to listen to me, let me tell you who the best people are to listen to. And certainly to some degree, they did listen to me. But when they were graduating from high school, I got my twins 2 books. I got them Aaron Lowry's Broke Millennial, because I think Aaron Lowry hits the idea around just the basics and financial solvency, not talking about getting wealthy or building any type of empire, but just making good, solid financial decisions. And then Scott Trench's book, Set for Life. And it's funny because my daughter, who has always during her whole life, they're 28 now, has made very little money. She is the thriftiest person alive. And Aaron Lowry just spoke to her. My son immediately he thought Aaron's book was fine. He reads Scott's book about take over the world and be everything very quickly. He's like, I'm doing that. So he immediately starts listening to Bigger Pockets back when Josh and Brandon are on, and he hears David Green's Burr Method. And man, right the second he got a job at Microsoft out of college, he took his very first paycheck and began the Burr Method, and very quickly over the last few years grew. And now he's growing much slower because obviously with interest rates being higher. So he purchased, I think, 3 houses last year, and he hasn't purchased anything in the last 8-9 months.
Wow, that's amazing. And what market is he in?
He's mostly in Detroit, which is where until 8th grade he grew up. What I find exciting about the world of real estate, and especially looking at Nick and people that have worked with him have said this, he's got this love affair with Detroit and having grown up there, and he wants to be a part of the rebirth. And being somebody that has seen the rebirth and has gone back there, because we have a lot of family still back there, even though he lives in Seattle, he gets really excited, and he knows the street by street battle that's happening. Like wherever he buys a house, when I've gone to look at them, he's not the only one. There's lots of houses being refurbished on this street. The street before him is beautiful, and the street on the other side still needs a ton of work. So he knows the street by street value. So he's very concentrated, except for one property. He's got one property in the west side of the state where I grew up, but the other ones are all in Detroit.
Sounds amazing. Sounds like we're going to have your son on the show too.
He has a lot of fun. He loves it. And he's also run into some trouble, when he and I talked about it. And whenever you use leverage products, you don't want to make the mistake I made. And certainly, Craig, you want to do things like you talked about, right? About you've got to have a buffer. You've got to have a reserve, because 2007, 2008 showed us that you will make money more quickly in real estate because of leverage. You will make money more quickly. But in 2007, 2008, you'll flush out the idiots far quicker, right? If I did leverage with my investments, people would say that I'm crazy because I'm using margin. We call it margin. And everybody's like, here's a margin. That's nuts. That's betting. You do the same thing in real estate. It's called a mortgage, So using leverage is a great place to be. But he ran into his first bump in the road. He's had to sue a general contractor that he had, who basically, after a while, he realized the general's just stealing money from him and not investing any of it into the house. And that really also set him back. But nicely, he had the buffer. He had the emergency fund in place that he could get through that.
How did he find out?
He found out because the person kept asking for money, and he's great at checking in on where we're at. And he would go visit every other month. And it just felt like, Allie, like nothing was getting done. There was always, at first, the excuses are fine, and you got to trust the people that you hire. You have to give them a little bit of room to do whatever they do. And so there were excuses, and then there were more excuses. And finally, it's like, all right, let's see what's going on. And then he realizes he actually did something that is a little dangerous. I think you'll want to talk to him about this, but secondhand story. He went right to the subs. And what's really interesting that he learned to do, I'm very proud of him for this too. He realized that talking to the people working on his houses was going to be very important to get the real intel from the people on the ground, and not just the general contractor. So when he goes and visits a property, being able to talk to everybody. Well, like a lot of people in building trades, many of them don't speak English. A lot of people working on his houses only speak Spanish. So Nick, in a very short amount of time, he's speaking Spanish often on the phone. When I go out, I just before we started this interview, I went out because as I mentioned, he's hanging out with us this week, and he was speaking Spanish out in the front room of my house. It's just amazing.
Wow. That's cool.
And by the way, he gets along far better with his workers as well when he talks to them in an area that makes them comfortable as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
There were a couple of renovations that I was doing here in Tucson, and I pretend to not know Spanish. Sometimes people think that I'm not. Sometimes I can pass for, I don't know what they think I am, but clearly I'm Spanish. And so, but I pretend to not understand it, right? Because you never know what people are going to say right in front of you, especially. I hate playing this card, but especially being female sometimes.
Sure.
So I was installing countertops, and my GC didn't do it. I trust my GC, but I had some countertop people over, different couple of, sets of them. One was like a dad-son couple. And the son was like in Spanish to the dad, how much should we charge her? And the dad was like, oh, charge her this amount. And the son's like, that amount? Really? And the dad's just like, yeah, just charge her that amount. We're all in the same tiny, tiny little kitchen area of one half of a duplex. And I'm just there like watching them, but pretending not to know what they're saying. And he's like, the son's like, how are we going to justify that? And the dad's like, just see what she says. And I'm like, really? Like, if I didn't know Spanish, it's,
wow,
man, I would have just said, okay,
Well, what happened? So like, how'd you respond?
I still pretended to not know Spanish because I don't want them to talk to others, So
you're clearly not going to work with them now.
Oh yeah. And any recommendation that they have. Plus, that's the whole benefit of interviewing and like getting more than just one quote, more than just one bid. So that was my second bid. So I already knew that one was extremely high compared to the first one. So I just took it at face value, pretended to not know anything. I was like, okay, thanks. I think that's really high, but thanks. And then they walked out and they're like, oh, well, we can change it. I was like, no, I have someone else coming in a second, which I did. But yeah, at that point, I don't care how low you want to go. It's ethics at that point, So
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's, I'm glad that he's learning Spanish.
It is that is paid. Talk about, we talk about investments and pay dividends. I can already see it early on in his journey that this Spanish is paying big dividends.
That's amazing. All right, Joe, we're going to have to, we're getting kind of towards the end here, but one last question.
Man.
Well, not really one last question, but I just want to hear where are you going? Like what's next for you?
I realized on my vacation that, when I was on TV as the Channel 7 Money Man, that kind of made me a little, not as comfortable, sharing money tips as, artfully finding new ways to include more people in these discussions. Like I'm far more interested in making this half of the country that we're leaving behind, according to these studies, the people that cry about their money, about being able to tell stories in different ways that than they've heard before. And how are we able to do that? So kind of the art around the money discussion, and how do we encourage these conversations? I feel like too many of us feel like we don't know anything. And so I mentioned Susie Orman before. We could even talk about Dave Ramsey, where I think a lot of people have these impressions of financial topics that we take our money that we're messing up to this person that knows way more than we do. We bow down in front of them and they lash out at us about how dumb we are for entertainment and for ratings. Yeah. And so where I'm at right now, Craig, is in changing that discussion. And if I can do it, if I can do it through humor, and we study comedy a lot, and our show has, as you guys know, a lot of comedy. So if I can make it fun and interesting and increase the number of people that think, yeah, I can do this, this would be okay. The main reason why our show's live from my mom's basement is because who wants to listen to a CFP and a dude that was one of 12 people at American Express? By the way, the people I messed up with their credit card, hired me to be one of 12 people that were a spokesperson for the financial planning division of the company later. I'm like, do you guys do any due diligence? Because I'm the dude that bought the sweater. I'm that idiot. But nobody wants to hear these, dudes that, going into Nerdville. So instead we thought if we're in mom's basement, it'll lower the temperature. And if we do comedy, it'll lower the temperature and make it more fun. So you think you can do it too. So Craig, that's right where my head is right now.
Awesome. I love that. I love the different approach. I think that's what we need. We need like a big refresh in how we think about money here in the U.S. And I love to see the spearhead that you guys are kind of on the forefront of it. And so love to see that.
What conferences are you going to? Where can I know we ask you like where can people find you at the end, but yes. Where can people see you in person?
So I was at Economy this year. That's a great conference. Have you guys gone to Economy yet?
No, but I've heard.
No, I haven't, but I've heard it's really good.
Yeah. Economy super. What's sad is that I need to go to more conferences where people can see me. Last year I did a 40-city tour with my book. So I went out and tried to see you, all of our friends, our stackers out around the country. But I go to like Podcast Movement so I can sharpen that saw. I go to FinCon, but I wouldn't encourage your listeners to go to FinCon because that's really where we're learning to do our job better. I feel bad when I hear people are like, oh, all my favorite creators are at FinCon, so I went. I'm like, that is a waste of money because I'm busy not paying attention to you. So the best thing to do, I think, would be to reach out to me on social media and say hi that way.
Awesome. Nice. And we will get to that at the very, very end.
Right.
And we're going to transition now to the very end.
That's why I was boying, because I knew this was coming. All right.
Coming to an end, yeah.
Yeah, can I stretch out first before we start?
Stretch it out.
Yeah. Do some jumping jacks and maybe put on your lucky sweater. And
all right.
Yeah. All right, Allie, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
This is the final
four. Joe's laughing.
So bad.
Yeah.
It's so bad. It's great.
It's kind of, you know what, this is kind of what this reminds me of, Allie, is every single time we do this. You know how people sing happy birthday, right? And it's happy birthday, and it's like the same melody and it's the same song. Well, yeah. Every time I sing it or I'm around somebody, I try to sing it like 2 words behind and extremely off tone and really loud for everybody to hear. And it embarrasses my wife big time and it embarrasses everybody. But it like makes singing happy birthday so much more fun, because when you sing happy birthday, you just want to get through it, right? No one really likes singing happy birthday. And so next time you get happy birthday, sing it loud, sing it clear, sing it super off pitch and see what people do.
Or you could also just harmonize, Craig. You could just harmonize.
No, I actually can't. That is not in my skill set.
I think if you guys seen the old Marilyn Monroe clip singing it to JFK, like this is a classic clip from way back. But she's like got this breathy Happy birthday, dear Allie. Happy birthday. You should do that, Craig.
Yeah,
All
I'll
right,
do
let's
that
do that
next
on
time.
the final four.
On the final four. Yeah. The final four.
Yes.
That's creepy.
All right. Yeah.
Hot.
We just lost everybody that was listening. We just lost them. All right, Allie, kick us off.
All right. Question number 1. What are you reading right now, Joe?
You know, I'm finally catching up with David Goggins, but that's not the book I want to talk about. I actually just finished a fantastic book. Anybody who's doing short-term rentals needs this book. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality, and it is a wonderful book about a couple guys building the number 1 restaurant in the world. Will Guidara is the guy's name, and it's 55 Madison. Madison. I'm going to get the name of the restaurant wrong, but him talking about hospitality, I think a lot of people in real estate, especially if you're in short-term real estate, you don't realize you're competing against Marriott, right? I mean, those lines are so blurred. So if you're doing the short-term stuff, I highly recommend. Well, I love the book for anybody, but Unreasonable Hospitality was one of the better reads I've had the last 5 years.
Nice. I'll put that on my list.
All right, Joe. What was the best piece of advice you ever received?
When I was in college, one of the things I did, I was an entrepreneur early on, not knowing what I was doing. So all the stuff I could have deducted would have been oh my goodness. But I owned a DJ company. So I would go do like weddings and high school, dances and all this stuff. And I remember I was bragging to a guy that owned one of these rental halls about how big my company was getting. We had 3 DJ systems and how I was going to have like this offsite office. And he just looks at me and goes, got to remember to keep your overhead low, and walked away. And I realized that keep your overhead low solves so many problems. So many problems. Who is it? There's an accountant that you and I both know who, and I'm not going to get his name because I really want to quote him. But when you look at all this stuff that's at the mall or at Walmart or Target, and it's all going to end up in a landfill someday, whether you want to end up in a landfill or not, everything that's in our video here is going to be in a landfill. Like, you start thinking about just buying what you need, and how, by the way, he talks about how tax effective that is and how being frugal saves the planet, saves everything. So keep your overhead low was the best advice I got.
Man, that's like hitting me right in the feels right now. Cause over the past, like last August, I decided to like go on like a little bit of a hiring spree with the FI team and all that. And, did not keep my overhead low because things were great. Right. And then this winter was like probably the worst winter in real estate in the past like 5 or 10 years, just in terms of transaction volume, with prices high and interest rates high, and it being winter. And it was just like, I just felt like I kept getting punched in the gut. And I did it, and I had to let these people go. And I had never had let people go because of, I have, but not because of something they didn't do. Right. This was my fault for hiring them. And I was like, man, I'm putting this big burden on their families, and it hurt. And so if I wish you came on like a year ago and gave me this advice, but
it's like, where were you, Joe?
You're a little late, but no, I just think it's so important. And I think it's like, I'm pretty good at keeping my personal finances under wraps, and even business finances too, for the most part, but I had lost sight of it there for a couple months, and, touch the fire to make sure it's hot, like you said.
So important.
What is your overall why?
Yeah, I think I definitely touched on this earlier, which is the 330 million people in the United States, half of us crying about our money. Let's lower that number. That's it. Period. Full stop. How can I help this community do better? That is, I don't see myself because of that. People talk about retirement, and this is what's great about the difference between financial independence and retirement. I can't see why would I ever stop doing this? Like, if this is the funnest thing I could possibly do, and I like the art of it much more than I like the giving financial tips, like how do we change these conversations? Like, I want to be that guy. Don Imus certainly said a bunch of stupid stuff that got him into big trouble before he died. But remember, in those last days, I saw video clips of him, and he's got like an oxygen tank next to him, and he's running oxygen because he's so old. Like, I don't want to be the Don Imus that's creepy saying bad stuff. I want to be that dude who's podcasting with oxygen. And if I die in the middle of a podcast, like, how great will those freaking ratings be? But it's like, you guys hear that show where the dude died halfway through? That was so awesome. Oh
Even
my God.
halfway through, who else
Yeah.
would have finished it?
That's your
Yeah.
No, if you know my co-host, he would keep going, Allie. I mean, he's a Marine. He would keep going. He'd just be
Yeah.
like, whatever, the mission is to finish this thing. If he dies, he dies. Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh man, that's so funny. That's hilarious. Joe, have you ever so right now your show is kind of like money with a hint of humor. Have you ever thought of like doing any sort of stand up or like comedy that way where it's like comedy primarily but with a hint of money?
I have kind of, but I love living in a little town, and my opportunity to do what they say that takes, which is going and doing open mic night a lot, is zero. But I have been doing a lot more speaking gigs. I'm speaking. I'm doing a keynote for a credit union in Nashville in early June, and then in late June I'm emceeing another conference, and I get to do a lot of comedy during those. So that's
That
fun.
way.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay. Want to make sure you're getting your fill. All right. Last question here. Or last kind of sort of question.
I need
Yep.
Craig as my agent, by the way.
There you go. Yeah. Let me know. Okay. So Joe, if you could remove one color in the world, what would it be and why?
Oh, remove one color. You know, it's funny because I thought of this color, and then I'm sitting here looking at my book, and my book is yellow, but I truly don't like yellow. Like yellow is, and don't get me wrong, everybody, it's a kick-ass book, and you should buy it. Like it's a great book, but I think about like a stoplight, and you know when it's yellow, like do I speed up, do I slow down? Like what does yellow really say? Yellow is exercise.
Yeah.
Well, and yellow is exercise caution, but why? Like, why do I need to exercise? I think it should be either red or green. Like, we should just have, hey, do this or do. So I don't know. Yes.
Red, green. Yeah.
Yellow, you're sending me mixed messages, damn it. Stop.
Yeah. What color would you have the sun be if it was if there was no yellow?
Oh, well, the sky's blue, and blue's my favorite color. So I don't know, green, some nice hunter green, like money green. I wake up every
Money
day, I
green.
get this nice green, money green tint out there, Craig.
Yeah, there's a Benjamin just kind of in the clouds.
Yeah.
Clouds are all $100
Yeah.
bills falling from the sky. Yeah, I love
God
it.
bless us, each and every one.
Yeah. Awesome, Joe. And finally, the question that we alluded to earlier, where can people find out more about you?
Yes, you will find me at the Stacking Benjamin Show every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We call it the greatest money show on earth because it is meant to be a circus on purpose. It's just a way to change the discussions. And you can find my book, Stacked, Your Super Serious Guide to Modern Money Management, co-written with Emily Guy Birkin, wherever books are sold.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Joe, thanks so much for coming on, man. This show has been a riot. I've had a lot of fun. And
Me too.
Yeah, good to see you as well.
Craig, Allie, thank you so much. This was a blast.
Thank
Awesome.
you, Joe.
We'll talk soon, Joe.
And that was Joe Saul-Sehy. Allie, what'd you think about Joe?
This was an episode that I'm going to be listening to over and over again, even though I was in it. I loved it. I got a lot of notes. I have a whole reading list now, which I'm excited about because I love to read. And he's a super awesome guy.
Yeah, I think that's like one thing that stands out, like probably the most about Joe is he's extremely humble. He's had tremendous amounts of success, and frankly, you wouldn't even know it just by talking to him. And I think that's the guy that like I aspire to be like. I think a lot of people in this community are trying to kind of keep humble and kind of maybe even fly under the radar. And he doesn't really fly under the radar because he does have a public figure. But if he was walking down the street, no one would know who he was, right? No one would guess that, where he's at and all that. And so, yeah, I love Joe.
Unless he was
I think
wearing
he's
that
got-
sweater.
Unless he was wearing that sweater. Yeah. That
Then you'd recognize him.
1986 Nautica. Yeah. Imagine seeing that sweater like on a mannequin today.
Oh, yeah. I'd be like, oh, that's Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. I'd be like, people are going to buy that? Like, say what?
It's cute. It's very well kept.
Yeah. He did a good job with it. And, but yeah, no, so Joe's good, a lot of good advice. And he kind of shows too that like, real estate wasn't for him. And we want to show you guys that real estate, we love real estate, right? You're never going to hear me say I don't like real estate, but it's not the way for everybody. And so you got to figure out what works best for you and keep going, go with it.
Yeah, exactly. I loved how he shared his lowest of the low, where he literally was talking about how he was crying and how his sole purpose is to help others not cry about money. So I love that. This was a great episode.
Yeah, awesome, guys. Well, again, if you like this episode, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes and on all the places that you listen to your podcast, I guess. And if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram. I'm the Fi Guy. Allie is Allie the Agent. Allie, anything else before we kick off for today?
That's it. After you listen to this, tag us and we'll share it. We love hearing any feedback from you guys, so we look forward to it.
All right. We'll see y'all next week.
See ya.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.